on Monday, July 10th at 6:30 p.m. to order. I'd like to call Mr. Joel Longfellow to lead us in O Canada, sir.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command, car ton bras est porté le pays, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Joel. Appreciate your rendition as always.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any addendum items and delegation items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I'd entertain a motion to confirm the agenda this evening. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? There being none, it shall be so noted. Thank you. I call for adoption of minutes of the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole 15-17 held on June 26, 2017. Mr. Bodner, seconded by Madam Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Move on now to determination of items requiring separate discussion. Maybe I have to start on my left. Councillor Bodner.
Item 3, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Danch, Mr. Elliott.
Yeah, just come back to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'll come back. Madam Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Items 5 and 9, please.
5 and 9. Madam Kenny?
Item 10.
10. And Mr. Elliott, we're back to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the number. My apologies. Just come back. I'll pass them. No.
Sure. I'd call for a motion to approve those items not required separate discussion. You found it?
I found it.
What
Sorry.
number?
Item 6. My apologies. Thank you.
And I'd still call for a motion to approve those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Carried. We have no delegations this evening. We do have a presentation. It's a Senior of the Year Award, and it's being presented to Phyllis Brown. And I'd like to, before I call Mrs. Brown to the podium, I'd like to provide you with a little better background information. Ms. Phyllis Brown is the recipient of the 2017 Senior of the Year Award. She is currently a member of the City of Port Colborne Senior Citizen Advisory Council. The members of this committee unanimously nominated Phyllis Brown for this designation. This award is given by a municipality to recognize an outstanding senior who, after age 65, enriches the social, cultural, or civic life of the community. The nominee must have contributed to the community and has made their community a better place to live. Individuals who qualify for this award may have contributed in many different fields, such as the arts, literature, community service, volunteering, education, environment, fitness, and humanitarian activities. After retiring, Phyllis convened the Retired Nurses Lunch for 10 years. At this lunch, 50-50 tickets were sold, which benefited the hospital foundation. She has spent her time volunteering with the Community Concert Association and assisted students in elementary school who needed some extra help learning to read. Phyllis was very involved with the Port Cares Outreach Center. Previously, Port Cares offered a course for adults who were interested in teaching adults to read. Phyllis took this course and practiced reading with a group of adults who also needed some extra practice. She then began volunteering twice a month at the food bank when it was located at the Roselawn Center. Phyllis said, volunteering there gave me a broader view to all the volunteers and just how important such a program was. In 2000, Phyllis became a member of the Meals on Wheels as a delivery person once, and in 2003 was determined to become a board member, serving as chairperson from 2009 to 2012. Today, Phyllis continues with Meals on Wheels as a board member and a delivery person. In 2016, Phyllis joined the Port Colborne Senior Citizen Advisory Council and was involved with the Age-Friendly Needs Assessment Survey. She hopes to continue with this committee for some time. Outside of the Port Colborne community, Phyllis is connected with an adoption search group and a small group that visits those recently bereaved who are housebound and are often without family members nearby. Phyllis is a wonderful addition to the Port Colborne Senior Citizen Advisory Council and a wonderful role model in our community with their contribution to community service, volunteering, education, and humanitarian activities. Thank you, Phyllis, for all that you do. We certainly salute you, and I would like to invite Phyllis to come forward to the podium. We recognize that all seniors across Port Colborne, the province, and our country for their contributions and love they share for their communities, families, and friends. We have a certificate to present to you, which has been signed by myself, the Honorable Deepaka. That's close enough. Demery, Minister for Senior Affairs, and Her Honor, the Honorable Elizabeth Delgersdale, Lieutenant Governor of Port Colborne. Lieutenant Governor, there. Okay, congratulations, and thank you for your many contributions to our senior citizens as well as the community at whole.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
It has been my privilege to serve the community, and I am honored to receive this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Turn it around so you can.
Oh, okay. Turn it around. There we go.
Glare, eh?
Our glasses on.
No, we're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are no delegations this evening. My report will be as follows. I spoke on your behalf at the Canada Day festivities of the Niagara Antique Power Association displays over the July 1st weekend. I was presented with a plaque in appreciation of our continued support. That's the City of Port Colborne's continued support. The association continues to preserve our heritage in a very hands-on, proactive way, and we are pleased that this organization is centered in Port Colborne. On Canada Day, I spoke at the Canada Day ceremonies at the Optimist Day in the park held at H.A. Snow Lakeview Park. The Optimists are to be complimented on the organization and execution of all activities for all ages, as well as the city staff who help coordinate events as well. And members of council who helped us with the cupcake supplied by Sobeys at no cost. It was most appreciated. As usual, the fireworks were a hit for the entire community. We received a letter from Chief McGuire concerning illegal storefront operations selling cannabis. He asked that I share this message with you. The purpose of this letter is to inform you that in the past 6 months, the Niagara Regional Police Services has observed a concerning trend of storefront operations opening in the Niagara region selling cannabis. These stores are commonly known as dispensaries or compassion clubs that are not licensed by Health Canada under the current law and are considered illegal. These operations are supplied by illegal growers and sell untested, unregulated products that may be unsafe and of particular risk to children. The Niagara Regional Police Service have investigated and closed these locations. The operators have been charged with drug trafficking, and their cases are currently before the courts. Until cannabis laws change and strict regulations and restrictions are put into effect, the Niagara Regional Police Service will continue to enforce the current legislation addressing illegal possession and sales of cannabis. I encourage you to share this information with your friends and members of the community and your constituents. As you're aware, Chief McGuire did not seek a renewal of his contract and will be leaving the police force, retiring as of July 15th. Pleasant Beach. I was told by our municipal law enforcement officer that many cars were tagged and towed out on Pleasant Beach over the long weekend and most recent weekend. This is a reminder to the public that Pleasant Beach is not a public beach. Parking restrictions are in effect, and our municipal law enforcement officers will be patrolling the area and tagging or towing offending vehicles. I might point out it's very expensive to receive a vehicle that has been impounded. I also point out that Centennial Beach and Nickel Beach are open to the public with plenty of room to enjoy the sunshine. I'm also advised that some individuals continue to thwart city law enforcement officers by removing the no parking signs on the posts that are there, and that this continues to be an ongoing problem, which I'm sure Mr. Bodner will address in his comments. That is the extent of my report this evening, and I look to Regional Councilor Barrick. I thought I saw him. Oh, there he is. You're shyly sitting back there. I saw you could drive in during the national anthem. Welcome.
Mayor, thank you. I have a brief update today. I wanted to give council and the public a heads up that council at its last meeting approved the 2018 budget guidance of 2%. The region's budget is approximately $1 billion, and so it is significant. Now's the time we set the guidance, staff do some work over the summer months, and we'll resume in the fall to roll up our sleeves and do our homework and diligence for the public. The guidance that has been provided is below the average target of many other regional and municipal governments in Ontario. When broken down, the guidance corresponds to 1.5% increase for the region's operating budget and a 0.5% increase earmarked for the 2021 Canada Summer Games, which we are proud to host in Niagara. The approved budget guidance of 2% also applies to the region's rate programs of water and wastewater and waste management. So for the average homeowner with a property valued by impact at $248,000, that's average for the region, a 2% increase on the regional portion of their taxes would equate to approximately $29 annually. And currently, the average homeowner in Niagara currently pays about $1,400 in the regional portion of their property tax bill every year. I wanted to also, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned Chief McGuire's retirement. As many may be aware, I sit on the Police Services Board. And so he does have a function coming forward to celebrate his retirement at the end of the month, and thank him for his all of his years of service, all of his 40 years of service, and certainly his 5 years serving here in Niagara. With that said, I've had one-on-one meetings with both the newly minted Deputy Chief Bill 40, as well as current Deputy Chief Ryan McCullough, who will become acting chief as soon as the Jeff McGuire retires, to make sure that they understand and they hear loud and clear the importance of the Port Colborne detachment remaining open at District 6, as well as I had the opportunity to speak with both of them and be very clear as well about the good work that the councillors are doing in Ward 2 with respect to the East Village Action Committee and that task force, and keeping those lines of communication not only open but enhanced moving forward. So that's my report this evening. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. A member of the council have a question. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To our regional councillor, Barrick. Councillor Barrick, I'd like your view on the region's development charges. We've sent a notice of motion, had a notice of motion in objection to that, and I just wondered if you could give me an update as to your stance on that particular item that's very troublesome to this community.
Great. So thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the question, Councillor. And I must say, certainly out of the gate when I saw the draft bylaw, I was vehemently opposed. And regional council, this process has been ongoing since the beginning of 2016. And so there was a couple of meetings, several delegations, several letters, such as the one that the City of Port Colborne issued. So thank you for that. We need to hear from all of our stakeholders. And so with that, we heard, the region has listened, and they have made some adjustments since then. And I know there was an area CAO meeting where it was kind of shared amongst some of the municipal CAOs. Now, they don't speak on behalf of their respective councils, but I'm hoping that information will be shared as well. So with that said, I want to highlight a couple of things, and then I'll answer your question more directly. So I was one of those who led the industrial development charge waiver the last term. And so that will stay in. It's in the new draft development charge bylaw. So no development charges for industry. There's still a nonprofit grant for development charges. And those who have applied through the brownfield program will be grandfathered in, for lack of a better term. Any new applications for the brownfield grant, there is a grant still in place. It's not as robust as the previous version, but it is still there, and there's some flexibility. The biggest component of concern, to your point, is with respect to single-family dwellings in greenfield areas. And I think there is some acknowledgement that growth pays for growth. But I think now I'm happy that a lot of these adjustments were made. But for me, it still doesn't go far enough. And I think we're at the point now we're talking a matter of degrees. The current one is about $10,000. The proposed one was going to be $20,000. Now they're at $17,000. And it's phased in over 2 years. So it's a lot better than it was. But for me, it doesn't go far enough. And here's why. The development charge bylaw is based on a capital plan. And so there's been a lot of talk on the bylaw itself, and the actual capital plan has been glossed over. That plan is $2.1 billion over 25 years, and the higher the number goes up, the higher development charges. The lower that number, the lower the development charges. And so my personal view is more time needs to be spent on that capital plan. The issue we're having is the current bylaw expires in August next month. But you can see every 5 years we review the bylaw. And from the 2012 study, there were projects in there totaling about $50 million, just example projects. The same projects which are not completed yet, such as roads and capacity improvements with water, wastewater, and reconstruction of roads, et cetera, The same projects are $153 million. Now, I know the rate of inflation, and I know the cost of materials, and it's not inflated, 400, 500, 900%. So I don't have a lot of confidence in the capital plan numbers. I do know that there were a handful of projects that were tweaked to lower that amount a little bit, but I think there's more room for us. So to answer your question, Councillor Kenny, I am not supportive, and I will not support the bylaw as it stands today. However, it is a lot better than where it was even a month ago. So I appreciate the letter coming from this council because it has had an impact.
If I can continue.
Yes, go ahead, Ms.
Thank
Kenny.
you, Mr. Another concern of ours was the increase. I think it was 415% increase in development charges on the multi-res. As you know, a lot of seniors move in, and they move into the area to go into apartment buildings. We have some being built, and that development charge on those multi-res to me was like, who gets 115% increase? So that was another concern of mine. So will that be addressed in this new report as well?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, you're right. They are grossly inflated numbers. For example, a 2- and 3-bedroom is currently about $4,600 and it's slated to be about $11,000.
Yeah.
4 bedrooms or even higher, et cetera. So, yes, I have problems with it. It's not exact. I understand the pressures of the capital plan and the whole debate, well, that it has to go 100% on the tax levy. But again, I think we're at a point where we're talking about a matter of degrees and finding the right balance. In my view, and it sounds like yours, that balance has not quite been struck yet. I'll be voicing this when it comes to council the next round, and I hope my colleagues around the horseshoe also raise these issues. Certainly, blending it in over a longer period of time, and the apartments, although Port Colborne in particular doesn't have a lot of development with apartment buildings, it does impact the rest of the region and our seniors and affordability.
Okay, thank you. And does anybody else have questions? I have one more, but not with the development. Does anybody have?
Anyone have a question? This is Kenny,
Sorry.
yielding the floor to yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just one more, Councillor. What is the, give us an update on the Burgoyne Bridge investigation? Where are we with that? Where are we going to find out the final results and of the overruns and overcosts and all those other good things? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there's kind of two components. One is that there is an OPP investigation currently happening. It is with the right authorities, and so it's in their hands to do their good work, and they will speak to results, if any, in due course. With respect to the project itself, I know that they are still in the process of closing out the project, and with respect to timeline, I would anticipate it, at least by the end of this year, to have that information handy. I don't sit on the Public Works Committee. I know the mayor does, and I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, if you have information with respect to the timing of that, but otherwise it'll be by the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for all the questions. Okay, thanks.
No, I have no information as to timing. That'll be in their hands. Okay, any other comments or inquiries? There being none, are there any staff responses to previous councillor inquiries? Mr. Aquilina. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Desmarais. She raised the point about electronic vaping and what are the rules under the bylaw that we have at the regional level. And I can inform you that right now there are no regulations. However, the province is proposing an electronic cigarette act that would regulate that. So as of right now, they don't have anything that's being drafted. The region is waiting for the province to let them know what the restrictions are and when this act will be in effect. So at the present time right now, regional enforcement officers ensure that the sale of the actual vaping product is not sold to anyone under 19 years of age.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina.
Thank you.
Is that satisfactory to you, Mrs. Damaris?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. I trust that you'll keep us up to date on any new developments on that. But I do thank you.
Any other responses by members of staff? There being none, we'll move on to consideration of those. Oh, sorry, Mr. Wagner, I didn't see you down there.
You kind of skipped over Councilor Evans.
Well, we were in the middle of that, but go ahead. It's your turn.
I have a couple, Councilor Evans.
Okay. Well, so does Mr. Bodnar, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Chris or Dan, I guess, the ongoing Pleasant Beach saga. And as we creep down the road to, to putting this thing to bed, can you give us an idea of the time to construction of the enclosure that will house the garbage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar. We've contacted the asphalt paving contractor. They're on place. It's in their queue, so to speak. So we're hoping that, weather permitting, that'll be done before the end of July. And we're, as I stated to several others earlier, we're soliciting the final pricing from fencing contractors with the intent that they'll be in as soon as the asphalt is in place. So if everything falls the way we're hoping and the weather cooperates, we're hoping probably early August at the latest.
Go ahead, Mr. Bodnar.
And something else also on Pleasant Beach. We had promised extra containers on the beach for what we hope is just beach goers' garbage to be deposited. We've seen pictures in these last emails of, overflowing container. It appears to be one container. Do we have more than one on the beach?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar. I had actually talked with staff this morning, and as you had said, we had originally one Parks container on the beach. It's been 2 weeks now. There's 2 other containers down there, and today they picked up those 3 containers plus multiple bags stashed around them. Prior to those multiple containers being there, we didn't have a problem with it being stashed around the extra barrels, but now, with this past weekend, it was very considerable deposits.
And I guess that's always hard to determine whether it's actual beach garbage or, possible people that live there dropping bags off, but that's just the way it is. So do we pick that up? I guess we just let it accumulate over the weekend and then Monday morning, or how do we do that? Do we do it every day?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar. We're picking up Mondays currently after the weekend. There's staff hasn't been directed to pick it up on the weekends, but we would have to look into that if the use continues the way it is.
And I just put kind of staff on notice. If that happens the next weekend, I think we need then to visit that maybe on a Saturday and a Monday, just so it doesn't get a chance, because kind of that, as soon as people see bags around, it kind of breeds dumb people to throw bags there too. So I think we need to keep a handle on that. I realize there'll be a cost to send people out, but I just think it just can't be left to its own devices. We got to control that. One more to Dan, probably. Did we have bylaw officers out there on the weekend? And do we have any idea on what they did, and were they there every day?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bodnar. Yes, we do have staff patrolling the area. We have issued, as of June 1st to July 8th, we've issued 47 parking tickets, and we've towed away 9 vehicles. As you mentioned, the signage was vandalized, and we weren't able to do anything on the ticketing or towing, but now the signs have been put up again. And I can report this weekend, as I mentioned, we have staff there every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. However, with an unfortunate death in the family, we were only able to patrol on Saturday. However, what we did do then was inform the NRP that there was no patrol, And I'm aware that then in the afternoon, the NRP was there.
All right.
Go ahead, Mr. Binder.
Okay, I guess that's it for my council's items, but I'd like to come back after everybody else has expressed their items, and I've got one last one.
Mrs. Demeray had an inquiry. Go ahead, Mrs. Demeray.
I have any items, is that?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two items this evening, both concerning expressions of interest. I do notice that we didn't have the anything on our agenda to address an expression of interest going to the federal government with regards to the downtown CIP, possible funding out there. Could we get that going? Do we need to move that on the council level? How do we need to make that happen?
Mr. CAO, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Through your worship to Councillor Demeray, I think you're making reference to the two programs that have been recently announced by the federal government. One is Smart Cities Initiative, and the other one is the super clusters. We did have a meeting about that today at the senior management level, and we are looking at how we can leverage that project for those programs. I think there's a bit of a stretch there. One of them needs smart cities, which there's an element of connectivity or connectedness, you know, streetlights that talk to cars and all that stuff, which isn't currently in our downtown CIP design plans, but that's not to say that it couldn't be. The other one, super clusters, requires two industry proponents. You know, something like the GE Brilliant factory that's being built in Welland. For those reasons, we're trying to see exactly how we can qualify, and I think we're going to have one more meeting at the staff level and file the expression of interest. I don't think we necessarily need a resolution of council for that stage. I stand to be corrected. I've been going over the programs, but when we get to the next stage, I think we'll need council support for that. If it's a fact that we do need it before July 17th, I guess we'll have to get to a special meeting of council to get that approval of the resolution. So we are working away on it at the staff level.
Okay, I wouldn't want to lose the window of opportunity, so I'm glad that we are going about it that way. So the other issue I have this evening is also dealing with an expression of interest, and it's for council to decide what interest that they may have or we may have in the property that the current water tower is sitting on. And once that is decommissioned, do we have an interest in that property? And if so, should we supply a letter of interest to the region for that property?
Mr. Lee or Mr. Aquilina, which of you would like to respond to that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Demeray, I can advise council that I have met with the regional real estate officer, not only on that property, but on another property as well. And we discussed this at the senior staff level again today. The question from the region at this moment was, does the city have any plans to relocate or remove the trail? So I responded today to say, no, we have no interest in relocating or moving the trail, but we do have an interest in the property for a nominal fee.
Okay, thank you. That's what I need to. Yeah,
satisfactory?
that's perfect.
Okay, Ms. Kenny, you had a couple more points?
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you. First of all, I guess if we go through you to Chris. Chris, I had a complaint about the tracks at Sugarloaf. And I'm wondering, I went and took a look, and they're in rough shape. They're in terrible shape, actually. And I was wondering why we've implemented I guess you call them those mats, you know, those rubber mats on the railroad crossing on Charlotte. Why could we not do those rubber matting there at that particular? There's lots of people riding bikes, walking, etc., and they're in terrible condition.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny. With regards to the Sugarloaf crossing, we already are working with the contractors already on board. That's on his list, along with many, to pave that for this summer to get us through the special events. And I've had meetings with Trillium Rail, and we've come up with a design scenario. That location will have a complete rebuild this fall with Trillium. They want to do it when the park is free and without all the activity that's there, because it would be very disruptive. And in the rebuild, we're looking at doing a concrete center core. This is the new technology that's been out for a couple of years now that replaces the rubber. It's much more substantial and has a much longer lifespan. So we're looking at doing that type of a rebuild for Sugarloaf and the same for King Street, both to happen this fall. Trillium has also got on their agenda in the next couple of weeks to do the Field and Avenue crossing, which actually has the spur line and the main line on it. So they'll be doing both of those, complete with the new pedestrian walkways that'll be in the rubber, but a yellow designate for the pedestrians.
Okay, because we did receive an email from a gentleman who had suggested highlighting those areas, and I just wonder what our response, because I'm sure he'll be watching, what would our response to him be? For, I think he was more concerned about the individuals using their scooters and such, that they don't have a safe spot to cross.
With the rebuilds, the pedestrian crossings and the scooter/cyclist areas will be defined with a different color.
Perfect.
There'll be the, in the case of the Trillium install at Fielden, it'll be the highlighted yellow rubber matting, which is on the trail sections. We have sections of that on the recreational trail that are that way. And in the rebuild at Sugarloaf, and then as well as at King, they will have the concrete sections, which will then be delineated for the pedestrian areas.
Okay, thank you. I have another one.
Go ahead.
Through you to the Deputy Chief. I had this dropped off, this case being from a fireworks and a letter dropped off at my house. This person lives in the urban area, in the Catherine Elm Street area, and of course, she says nothing against fireworks, but she wonders if we have a regulation for the size of, she had at least 50 of these on her yard, her driveway. She had to get some young guy go up and take some off her roof.
What are they, Mrs. Kenny?
They're casings from fireworks, sir. That's what they are. She brought me this one, and she said she picked up lots more, but she's probably wanted to show me a sample of the size. And she wonders if we have, she doesn't mind fireworks going off, but not when right next door they're having these size fireworks go off. She was concerned about people who, like she's elderly too, and she lives by herself, and she was concerned that if that ever caught fire, what, you know, or
Deputy
can
Chief.
we, I guess.
India, do you have a comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, that appears to be what's called family fireworks, which is approved through the explosive regulatory. They're allowed to be sold to persons above 18 years of age, be fired by persons 18 years of age. The problem is people aren't being considerate when they're shooting them off in relation to their neighbors. We received a lot of complaints this year about people shooting fireworks off and debris falling on their property.
That's what she was complaining.
We are in the process of redoing our fireworks bylaw, which will be more stringent with regards to shooting of family fireworks. Because after we did our bylaw the last time, the act changed and they reclassified stuff. That does fall under family fireworks, that size. Now, from what we're told by the explosive regulatory people, that is not supposed to be burning when it drops. It's just supposed to be the casing. But we did receive a lot of complaints from people firing fireworks off too close to their neighbors' garages, homes, and we actually stopped some of these people from doing it. But it's a huge problem because we had a lot of people shooting fireworks this year. I think this is one of the higher years I've seen of people shooting family displays.
She said that too, and she understands it was our 150th birthday celebration.
And I
but
think
she-
maybe that had something to do with
yeah,
it.
but she was very concerned that they could be a danger, you know. So she brought it to my house and with a very nice letter asking me if I would bring it up at council. So I just bring it up to see if there's any regulatory, and you're telling me that these are regulation.
That size appears to be display fireworks, or family fireworks. Display would be a lot bigger
So there's no regulation about, I guess,
There is, provided they're shooting fireworks that were approved by Canadian Explosive Regulatory.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in our municipality, and Fort Erie has the same problem, we get a lot of fireworks coming over from the United States.
yes.
Which if we find them, we seize them, but we have to, unfortunately, we have to know about it when they're being shot.
Okay.
It's a huge problem, but our new bylaw will address shooting of family fireworks more stringently.
Okay.
Mr. Bindia, could you briefly explain the difference between these fireworks that Mrs. Kenny is referring to and the fireworks that the city lets off on Canada Day and on Canal Days?
Well, there's two basic, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's two basic types of fireworks. One is family, one is display. Family fireworks can be purchased, provided we have a bylaw that regulates when they can purchase them and when they can shoot them. And they are up to specific sizes. I don't want to cite you a size off the top of my head because the act has changed. But they can be shot by anybody that's over the age of 18 years old on their own property. It can't interfere with other people's property. It can't endanger other people's property. Display fireworks have to be shot by a licensed fireworks supervisor, like Red Boss that shoots for Canal Days. They are fireworks, they hold fireworks supervisor cards, and their people that shoot have fireworks technician cards. So they have to be approved by the local fire department in order to hold that display. So we have copies of their physical cards. We check who's shooting, whether it's Garden City, whether it's Red Boss, or any other company. They have to provide us documentation that they're certified to do what they say they're going to do, along with a site plan, safety plan, and meet the distances in the Explosive Act for where they're going to shoot and how they're going to shoot.
When do we anticipate the new bylaw?
We were really hoping to have it for this May 24th weekend, but unfortunately it got out of hand on us and we didn't get it. I have a draft ready to go to our clerk within the next 3 weeks.
So,
We
fair to
will-
say it's imminent?
We will have it by the end of, I'm hoping by the end of September in place.
Thank you, Mr. Bindia.
Thank you.
Mrs. Kennedy, anything
Just
further?
one more. And it's the same concern that Councillor Bodnar expressed, and that's with the Pleasant Beach waste. Chris, you sent us an email, but I just kind of wanted to read part of that email so that anyone here that might be listening, or if people are from that area, that you're saying that the you got paving contractors list and hopefully completed before the month's end, depending on the weather. So that's, now we're talking the end of July. And then it says contractors are presently being solicited for the construction of the actual enclosure to enable construction of the enclosure as soon as the asphalt pad is in place. So are we talking now the end of the summer? Like nothing's going to be done now again to the end of the summer?
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, I would certainly hope not. As I said before, the asphalt contractors are susceptible to weather. As everybody knows, we've had all this rain, so they're backed up on every job, not just ours. So we're pushing them to give us special considerations by all means. And as I said previously, the intent is that as soon as the asphalt pad is down, these fencing contractors can move in. So we're hoping early August.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to ask, but Chris, wasn't there an asphalt pad there already when we had, when they had the bins and everything there? Did they not sit on an asphalt pad along with the porta potty, which was removed as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, the current asphalt pad that's proposed is located on the west side of the roadway, away from the cul-de-sac, so that cars can continue to turn around. And with meetings with the region and with the property owners and all the parties concerned, this is the size of that pad that we're proposing now is much larger than what was previously there. The enclosure is approximately 12 by 36.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Mr. Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In keeping with recognizing citizens in our community that do some really neat things, I'd like to take some of my time just to recognize one person in the community, Doug Miracle. He's a well-known artist in the community, his work is just featured on the summer 2017 Lee Valley catalog. And anybody that knows Lee Valley, that's kind of the Bible for really neat things, carpenter tools, gardener tools, and his carving is on the front page of that. I think that's worth recognition. And if I can just tell you a little bit about Doug. Doug is a Mohawk Indian, Bear Clan, who was born in the Six Nations. Initially, he worked in stone, allowing the creations to come from within the stone. If you ever have a chance to talk to him, you have to get his thought process on what he carves, because he just doesn't carve what he wants. He carves what's in the stone. He just takes away the layers from the outside, and whatever's inside of there comes out. So it's really, really neat, his thought process. And while laid up at home with an injury, his neighbors stopped by and showed him an interesting soapstone brick. He took his jackknife and carved a little mountain man with his knee up in buckskin and holding a Kentucky rifle. This piece was presented to the Premier of France. The next one went to the King of Belgium. Later, he committed his dream images into bronze using the lost wax process. He also carves in wood and creates images on paper using acrylic and colored ink. Doug's sculpture is incredibly detailed and sensitive to historical and technical detail. He spends a lot of time on research before he begins a new piece, and he has spent time on archaeological digs, including the one near the Peace Bridge in Fort Erie. His work has been presented to royalty and heads of state in Europe, Asia, and Africa. As an internationally famous artist, Doug was asked to have his life mask done, along with Prince Charles, Anne Murray, and Wayne Gretzky, by the Canadian government for the W. Ross Macdonald School for Blind Students in Brantford. The flow of success continues as Doug branches out in another direction, creating books. One entitled Nigwawi's ABC book was commissioned for adults learning to read and learn more about their Mohawk culture. It is currently available in libraries. His works are in the possession of the King of Belgium, the Premier of France, His Royal Highness the Aga Khan, the Deputy Premier of the People's Republic of China, the Chairman of the Board of Johnson & Johnson, Governor Cuomo of New York, bronze sculptures for the W. Macdonald School, stone sculptures for the Museum of Man in Ottawa, the President of South Africa, the Ontario Heritage Foundation, the Honorable Susan Fisk, Minister of Citizenship of Ontario, Department of Indian and Northern Affairs, Ottawa, the Canadian Museum of History, Gatineau, Quebec. So we have somebody living right here in Port Colborne. He lived for years in Sherkston, then moved to the big city of Port Colborne. So, but he's still a Sherkston guy. And he not only is a talented artist, he's also a teacher. He has a studio very near Dan's place on just in Ridgeway, and it's called the Phoenix Artist Group, and he teaches, and these artists that he's teaching are putting out fantastic things. So just a shout out to a local guy that if you met him, he's very humble, you would never know he is a famous artist, but he puts out great work. So just somebody in our community that does something pretty amazing.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Does he have a retail outlet in Ridgeway? Did you say?
Yeah, you can go to his where he teaches the Phoenix Artist Group. Yeah, I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Councilor Danch.
Through you to, I believe, Chris, there, we've got this nice new building sitting on Kalali Street on the island, and we're just kind of wondering when we might be moving in.
Mr. Mr. Lee.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Actually, I had brought that up at the directors meeting earlier today. The intent is we're going to phase in the move. Right now, we're having the contractor go through deficiencies that the architects and the project managers have brought forward. We don't want to get in there before those deficiencies have been handled under the contract. That being said, engineering staff will be moving in, the intent is the last week of July. Parks and Public Works are intended to go in following Canal Days. We want to keep them in their existing facility so that they're not disrupted and they can do the Canal Day scenario without tripping over boxes and parts and pieces. And, it's just a logistics scenario that we're doing. So the intent is that Public Works and Parks and Engineering should all be in and functional before Labor Day.
Just because you had mentioned the deficiencies, like how many deficiencies are we looking at in this place? I mean, it's pretty decent looking. I've been in it a couple times myself, but just wondering what we're dealing with there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Actually, the contractor's been working on the deficiencies now for approximately a month. There are a lot of them are internal wiring issues, logistics in the HVAC, things of that nature, the building automation system, making certain that it's fully functional before we take ownership.
Yeah, I know everyone's looking forward to getting into it, including some of the city staff as well. I mean, they've been working at a kind of a hole for several years, and it's long overdue. I know some people always question why we spend money like we do, but I think this was money well spent, and we need to get those people into that facility. Thank you.
Any other questions come rising out of? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions to Chris based on other councillors' questions. Councillor Kenny raised the rail crossings. In that, you failed to mention the Colborne Street crossing. I'm not sure that's our responsibility, that may be the region's, but any idea on a timeline for that to be repaired? That sign, the bump, and the pylon's been there for quite a while now.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Kenny, actually in my discussions with Trillium, I had mentioned the Colborne crossing and how they were getting along with the region on that. They had said that the region was getting back to them with a budget number on what they had, and they would be working on that in the next month or so.
Okay, just in a follow-up to an answer you gave on the Sugarloaf crossing, did you say we're going to repair that for Canal Days and then go back in later and, I guess, repair the repair?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Kenny, that's correct. We're going to do a temporary repair on it now to make the crossing smoother, but underneath section, the ties, the steel is what has to be really replaced. So we're doing a temporary asphalt repair on it now, and then a final repair then in the fall.
Okay, just so that we got a heads up that people may question, hey, didn't you just go in and repave that, and now you're going to back in later on and digging it up and fixing the repair that you already did, so people know there will be a temporary patch put on, and then a final repair will be made after the summer. You said August, September?
We're aiming for the month of November when things have quieted down in the park and we don't have a lot of traffic in that area.
Okay. And just to follow up on Councillor Danch's inquiry with the Operations Center, just give us a quick synopsis on the timeline. Are we ahead of schedule, and where are we on budget on it?
Mr. Lee.
As far, through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, as far as timeline is concerned, the contractor had originally scheduled to be completed so that we could move in June. We've been, staffers and the project managers have been actively pushing on that. There's been multiple meetings and scenarios to try to make that happen. And with regards to budget, we are on the numbers that you had granted us. We have not gone over.
Are we all content? Thank you. At this time, we move on to discussion of items requiring separate discussion. Consideration of that. First item on my list is number 3, Mr. Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division Report number 2017-116. Subject, Black Creek, Henry, John Pitts, and Fred Pitts Municipal Drains.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Elliott? Go ahead, Mr. Bodner.
Thank you very much. If council had looked at this report, and our drainage superintendent, Henry Bennemeyer, is here, and his staff, I'd like to thank them. You can see the huge amount of work that has gone into this. And the years that that Henry had to go back to find out things and make sure things were right. And I did sit on one of the courts of revision for this drain in Fort Erie because it spanned different municipalities. And Henry worked hard to get our share of the, the costs down, and I'd like to give kudos to him that, he recognized there was something that wasn't exactly in our favor there, and he worked to get that down. And I just like to acknowledge that the tremendous amount of work that went into this. And, sometimes we get beat up on, oh, we're not keeping up on these drains, and, but there's a process, and it takes, well, some of us think forever, but it takes a heck of a lot longer than you would ever consider. I just wondered if Henry might just take a minute or two just to tell us where we're at with this and what this will allow us. Will it allow us to do cleaning now, the drain? Will it let us move ahead? Because we just can't go in and do what we want to do and send water someplace that isn't ready for it. So, Mr. Mayor, can we have Mr. Benner just
could you come forward and respond to Mr. Bodner's inquiries? I think the process is complicated also by the fact that we are crossing two municipal boundaries. We have to deal with the town of Fort Erie as well. Go ahead, Henry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner and the rest of council. Thank you. Yes, it is very time consuming. You do, and when you are working with other municipalities, you have to be sort of on your guard. In this, with respect to the Black Creek drainage works, it's a rather large system. It's the Black Creek, it's the Marsh drain, it's the Fred and John Pitts drains, and the Henry drain. And there's actually another system that dates back to the late 1800s that I just uncovered here a few years back that probably has been cleaned in 100 years. And it's a drainage engineer that actually came out of Dunnville. I recognized his name. And so that's sort of gives you a picture of the research that you have to do. Things sort of fall away to the side sometimes over the course of years. But thankfully, we have very good records here at the City of Port Colborne regarding Humberston's legacy, Birdie's legacy, Wainfleet's legacy. There's surrounding municipalities. This report will allow for future maintenance of Black Creek, Marsh, John Pitts, Fred Pitts, Henry Drain, so that we can keep them up to date and on a routine maintenance schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Benner. Any questions of the council to Mr. Benner? Mr. Bodner.
Thank you. Just more of a statement. So, council, when we ask for money in the budget for drain cleaning and everything, all this good work that Henry's done, to allow us now to do something, now it's upon us to do it. No excuses. We just we gotta do it. So, thanks, Henry, for getting us this far, and we'll put some money towards it, hopefully.
Any other questions of Mr. Benner? Thank you, sir, for coming forward. Any other questions on this issue? We'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next item is item number 5, and Mrs. Damaris, that was you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development Bylaw Enforcement Division, report number 2017-117, subject bylaw services update.
Seconder for the recommendation, Councilor Kenny. Discussion.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I pulled this because I wasn't really sure why it was in front of us tonight. For me, I looked at it and I wasn't seeing any new information. This is information that's actually been talked about by council for quite some time now. And I did see a suggestion about a bylaw student, and I'm wondering if that was the real purpose of it. Is there discussion needed around that? But it didn't come in the form of a request, so I was rather confused, and I'd just like to clear that up.
Mr. Aquilina, can you address that?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. What I had directed the supervisor of bylaw enforcement to do is to provide some information to council to illustrate how busy bylaw enforcement is. And it's for your information. I can advise as well that in 6 months of this year, we've closed out more files than we have from 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, or 17. We're on pace right now for over 700 complaints. So we're extremely busy. Bylaw enforcement is busy. We're trying to close out as many files as we can. I just authorized or assigned the timesheet of the supervisor for 50 hours of overtime. And we have overtime being done by the bylaw officers as well. So we're trying to keep up. We're doing our best to keep up. So it was more of an information for council's information.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina.
And that's, I thank you for that. I just, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Aquilina, I just wonder, the suggestion of the bylaw student is sort of intriguing. I'm wondering, is that something that you want to see happen, or is it just put in there strictly for information?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Desmarais, bylaw enforcement, we did have as part of my budget a summer student for a bylaw officer. It wasn't supported by council, so we do have one student for all of the entire department that deals with planning and building and economic development. So what I've done is I've directed more time to be spent with bylaw enforcement, and in fact the student has actually accompanied staff with writing tickets. Pleasant Beach, for example. So the more resources we can expend for bylaw enforcement would be better, because we're so busy. So yeah, it's really something that council will have to consider again for 2018. There'll be a request as well if this keeps up with the amount of complaints we receive. I would recommend the same thing through our budget in 2017, but doing our best to try to fill in the gaps with the current student we have. But we can't devote 100% of his time to bylaw enforcement, because we have coverage we have to ensure is there, vacation times, planning. The student is busy as well, so.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Go ahead, Ms. Doris, one more question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, again, it's the same thing. I'm just, I'm wondering if this is a situation of we've fallen behind and can't get caught up, or is this a situation that we're looking at a new way of doing business where people are complaining constantly and the complaints are far beyond what we can control with the staff we have on board? Is that expected to be continued? Because if it is, then that's something we need to face, a reality we have to face at budget time.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Desmarais, I think it's a reality of the society we live in. Council actually has passed some bylaws that have expedited things, and now residents are seeing actual results, and that may be leading to more complaints because they see things are being resolved. We can use more resources in bylaw enforcement, but there's no forecast for years in the future. We have surpassed the number of files we've closed, and we're now in July. As you see in the report, we actually have the details of the number of complaints we received. 2016, we had 575. Right now, we're up to 365. So you can see just from the date the report was written, we went from 306 to 365. So I think it's just the reality of the society we're in.
Madam Desmarais, you finished? Any other discussion on this issue? Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Dan. We're too late for this year, but there has been some concern raised with the grass bylaw that complaints aren't accepted until June the 1st. And I think with a change in the weather that we've noticed lately, grass is growing a lot sooner. And if we want to change the bylaw that allows complaints to be lodged before June 1st, say we want to back it up to May 1st, how long does that process take to change that? Is that a quick turnaround so that we can get something in place for next year?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, I had advised council previously that it's something that we're going to bring forward to up the date of the long grass complaint. So it may be early May. That decision has to be made. It needs a bylaw amendment from council, and it's something that will be in place before the next season takes place. So again, you take the number of complaints we receive. Long grass complaints are at a premium that we've received. If council bumps the date up, you can take the number of complaints that we'll get and they'll be increased that we deal with.
Okay, I'm kind of looking at it twofold. Yeah, you might get through to Dan. You might get more complaints, but we might be able to get the grass complaints looked after more quickly. I look at it as we wait till June the 1st, all of the complaints happen at one time, and then you get backlogged. If a complaint is going to come in early May, you may be able to weed some of them out before you get into the real bad growing season. We might be able to have some grasses cut so that they're done before you get into the June issue where everybody seems to complain right off the bat. So I think it's something that we should look at. We might, be careful what you ask for, but I think that there has been people that have wanted to have properties looked after earlier in the year, and I think maybe if we, on a 1-year trial, see what happens if we back it up to the early part of May, just to maybe accommodate some of the cuttings earlier in the year than later on. So there could be discussion around that.
Thank you for your comments. Any further discussion on this issue? There being none, I'll call for a motion to accept the recommendation. Moved by Councillor. I already moved, but I already called for the question. All those in favor? Opposed is carried unanimously. Next is item number 6, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you want me to read the whole thing or just the top?
First paragraph there.
Yeah. Community and Corporate Services Division Report number 2017-111, subject 2017 financing for capital projects, Region of Niagara Infrastructure Ontario Loan Program.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Danch. Discussion. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Peter. Just one quick question. The marine lift debenture 10-year loan, and it's not going to cost anything because we're going to use matured debentures to pay for the loan. Those matured debentures are coming from where?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, the mature debenture is a marina debenture, and so it's going back into the marina. It doesn't necessarily have to be a marina debenture that goes back in. It's a corporate debenture. So this particular one, though, was a marina debenture that's maturing, and so we'll be able to use the same money in order to pay for the purchase of this lift, marina lift.
Perfect. That's the answer that I wanted to hear, because I was going to say, I guess I look at the marina as a separate entity. I know it's part and parcel of the overall corporation, but because of the revenues that they generate, is there any way that they can be, I guess, divided off into its own separate entity that all their revenues pay for their operation of it, so that nothing, I shouldn't say nothing, that as little as possible on the operational side of it is attributable to the levy, so that they are self-supporting and self-funding? And that's why I raise that to see if they're taking their revenue and buying their equipment and supporting themselves instead of it being on a general levy. Is there a way of doing that, or can we?
Response?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Elliott, it is. It is set up as a separate division within our budget, so it does show the marina revenues and their expenditures, and shows whether or not they're showing a profit or loss. And as I mentioned before, through the last couple of budgets, we are doing quite well in the marina, where our revenues are continually to increase, but obviously expenses tend to increase when your revenues increase too, to a certain degree, and we're able to now start to put money into reserve funds for future capital.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Peter. what I wanted you to say, just so that people know that it actually generates enough revenue to carry itself. Because I know in years past, there's always been a rumor about how the marina loses money and we're paying for this, we're paying for that. But we're now at a point where it is becoming so successful that it is carrying itself, and that I'll say taxpayers' money, general levy money, isn't going back in to support it, that it is supporting itself. So that's great news, and I hope that people understand that it is self-sustaining, so it's really good for us.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Any other questions on item number 6? There being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 9, Madam Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community and Corporate Services, Community Services Division, report number 2017-110. Subject, Community Services Division 2017, Program Delivery and Operations.
Seconder for the recommendation, Mr. Bodnar. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't say enough about this group of people here that put it all out there and do such hard work all the time, and that's evidenced by the report that's in front of us. But I do know that the CAO would like to speak to it, if he could.
Sure. Through your worship to council, I think that, and I think Director Sinnes might have something to say too. This report is very well prepared, and it is a very detailed description of the work that's done by a very small group of people in the city that covers such a wide range of activities, and all through the year, 12 months of the year. And I know that council knows that there's been some changes even before the time that I came to the city, and there's been some staff that have been lost along the way and not replaced, so it's made it even more of a challenge for those folks to continue to maintain the programs and services and facilities that they do maintain. And I think that that group should be commended for what they bring to work every single day. I'm not sure if...
Mr. Sinnes, would you like to add to those comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Basically, yeah, I've in meeting with community services staff over the last few months, one of the things I wanted to bring forward was exactly what is happening within community services and all the events. And so in meeting with staff, and they were quite happy to put a lot of this together and work at what they're doing within each division. And I thought it would be a good report to bring forward to council, because I know the amount of events, and they continue to grow on an annual basis, not only and it's within a number of facilities. And that's why I sort of really wanted to bring forward this type of report, which shows that, you know, community services we're covering, you know, between the Valley Center, recreation programs, which stem out to the Marina, Roselawn, and the Valley Center, Roselawn Center itself, and the activity that's going on there, and now the Showboats there also, and expanding their programs and what's happening, and also in festivals and events. You know, now that we have Berkeley on for the next 2 years, so you can see how things are really starting to progress in Port Colborne, and the volunteers. And we talked about the marina, and it shows in the report even for the marina how our revenues are growing. And so it just shows that how well we are doing within each of these facilities, and promoting our facilities from a marketing and communications perspective. It's growing. And we're getting grant programs for different facilities for different things that we're doing. So Nickel Beach is another one that we're moving on and dealing with the Ministry of Natural Resources and so on. So I thought it was a good opportunity for staff to actually get together, work on something together, and sort of pull together a lot of the work that's going into the division itself, and what we're doing for the community as a whole. And I really commend the staff that we do have, and most of them are here to support their report going forward to council, and to answer any questions that council may have of their particular areas of that they work on a daily and weekly and annual basis. So I really commend the staff for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Sinnes. May I be so bold to suggest that perhaps in recognition of our appreciation that we give a round of applause to these hardworking people. That doesn't happen every day, that's for darn sure. Are there any questions the council may have of those members of staff who are with us this evening? Yes, Mr. Bodner.
Thank you. Not a question exactly, but a sigh of relief. Okay. But a comment. We've got a really great report, Peter, like you said. I think it highlights different areas. And I wonder if we might get that on the website just as this report, not necessarily hidden in the body of a council minutes that everybody might not read. But, you know, you can go through there and you can pick out Roselawn, you know, the Marina, the Vail Center, all those different things that people may not even really realize what's going on. So it'll just give them a taste of really what goes on in the city, and they might be surprised by, you know, the actual activities that are going on. So,
Madam Clerk, could we see this report that's on their website?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think through the director, I can work with him to make sure that it's posted on the city's website.
Thank you. Mr. Bodner, or Mr. Elliott, you had a question?
Yeah, more of a comment, Mr. Mayor. The report is unbelievable, and I'm really surprised that there's not any staff members from that department that would like to come up and say anything. You sure? Anybody? I mean, usually when we get reports that come to council, the whole department doesn't show up to come to council with the report, but I really like it. It's awesome. I really like the calendar at the end with the subheading down below on the events that are going on. If anybody wants to take a look, post this on the website and see what's going on in town, refer to this, because in the summer months, we may be a small town, but there's a heck of a lot of things going on. Not taking anything away from the other months of the year, but June, July, August, I don't know if there's a busier municipality in all of Niagara than Port Colborne, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Fabulous report. And I know I've bothered more than one of you a lot of times over the course of the year. So kudos to everybody for the job that you've done. And I'd like to commend you by saying to the rest of the departments, this is such a well-written report about what you're doing. Is there any way that we can have a quarterly or a biannual report from other departments that say, this is, you know, and it doesn't have to be in depth, but here's a recap of what we've done? Because right now, basically, council asks, you know, where are you on this project? Where are we on this? How have we done that? But there doesn't see anything, I don't see another department, and not laying blame, but this kind of encapsulates what you've been doing. And it would be nice to see that from other departments, a little snapshot on, this is what we've done, these are the projects we initiated, this is where we are on them, just so that the community as a whole can see what all the departments are doing. And I know how busy everybody is. So I would throw it out there that twice a year or 3 times a year that we could have departmental reports come that say, here's the projects that we've done. This is what we're looking at going forward, just so that we're more informed. This is outstanding. This is really well done and shows us what community services has done. Maybe you set the bar for the other departments in the city. And we won't even look for a spokesperson to come forward and present the report, because I really know Gina wants to get up, and I know that she's holding her chair so she doesn't have to. So I won't set her out. But I like a report like this, and I don't know how much work it is for department heads to do. That's why I'm not suggesting that it on a monthly basis, but you know, 2-3 times a year, just to give everybody a heads up and inform us where we are and what's going on and things like that. So I don't know if anybody else from council is.
May I suggest that we put your suggestion on the CAO's director's agenda for a subsequent discussion? Yes. Mrs. Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to add my praise for a well-written report. Councillor Demery and I were discussing. No wonder, it's the fun department. Like anything that's fun that's going on in our city is that department. So of course they should be all happy and write a nice report because they're happy because they're bringing great things to our community. Everything that our community loves to do is from the fun department. So that's the fun department. We consider them the fun department. But a well-written report, and certainly goes a long way to show that even though they're busy planning for a great summer, they have time to write a report that's very comprehensive and very well documented. And so kudos to the department, to the fund department.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenny. Is there any more comments? There being none, I call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next item, item number 10, Mrs. Demery, that was you as well? No, Mrs. Kenny. I'm trying to give you some more work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community and Corporate Services Division Report number 2017, subject Port Colborne Farmers Market, options for expansion and method to proceed with the sale and sampling of wine.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Madam Demery. Discussion. Madam Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple of questions in regards to that. First of all, I was a little disappointed that the expansion isn't going into our paved section. I find the ground in our park not very level, and I find that would be hard for people to walk to those vendors. I'd rather see it safe for them. Just take a walk there sometime and see how the ground in the park isn't level, and I don't find it suitable for vendors. Our Canal Days is coming up very shortly, and you know we set up that stage a day early, and it takes up practically that whole section of our park. So I would have rather seen it expand into the paved area. That's our area, and it certainly doesn't. The one-way doesn't go that way. The one-way comes out this way, so people wouldn't be traveling down there anyway. And then I just wanted to ask about. See, it says here for the food vendors, if there are food vendors there, they have to have flooring, whereas they would not have to have the flooring if we were in the paved section. So that's my only disappointment with this, is that that we're not putting it where I think makes the most logical sense. And I think it's great that we're finally at least thinking about expanding. I've heard from the market clerk many times saying that she has to turn people away. I certainly hope she won't have to turn people away now if we have that in place. And then just one question about the sampling of the wine. We're now allowing the sampling of the wine according to this report. And are we having, there's a limit of 3, and that's my last question on that. Is there a limit of 3? I don't know, Dan, are you going to answer that for me, or who's going to answer that for me? Peter, are you answering that for me? Okay, Peter, thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Kenny. According to our report, it would be 2 wineries that would be allowed in the market at one time, and 3 crafters instead of 2 crafters. So it would be 5 vendors in the King George Park if that's approved by council.
Go ahead, Ms. Kenny.
So that's so we're only expanding by 5 more vendors. Is that what you're telling me, or we're expanding more, but some of those will be farmers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, by putting the craft vendors that we currently have, which we normally have 2, they would be put into the King George Park along with an additional crafter. And so their spots that would become open in the market area, where we would then be able to fill it with a farmer that's selling product.
Okay.
So we are expanding. It's expanding the farmers market itself, and it's also expanding the crafters and winery.
And sorry.
Go ahead, Mrs. Kenny.
And we're stuck on King George Park. We're stuck on. That's what we're going to do. That's the only objection I have to it. I want to expand, but I want to expand that way, not in the park. Thanks.
Any other questions? Madam Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support the idea of expanding the market and including the wine. I think that's a really good expansion. I too would have preferred to use the one-way street area, but I do understand that especially the bank comments made it very clear that they have an issue with it, but they already have a lot of problems with parking. So I do understand that. The other businesses seem to be rather supportive, so that worked out very well. I don't think it'll be a problem with King George Park at first. The footing is a little bit uneven, but you get that a lot at any kind of field type event, so it's not going to be a big deal. I think it should work out really well, and if we find that that's not the best choice, we can always move it around later. That could be changed again. We'll see what the future brings, but I fully support this. I think it's a good move forward, and it'll make our market even better.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess through you to Peter, do we ever give consideration to close down Charlotte Street in front of City Hall and expand into to that portion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott, that was one of the options, but it's an option that if you're closing down Charlotte Street, it becomes an issue for the fire department with regard to access on this street, and also we'd have our transit bus that comes down the street, and it also we lose parking along Charlotte Street, where some people do park along there to go to the market, and you'd basically be also cutting off, having to close off the street. You'd have to close it off right from King Street, and that may affect also the church area.
Thank you, Mr. Sinnes. Any further questions? Are you ready for the vote? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That would appear to conclude all the items for separate discussion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There being none, I'd call for a motion for adjournment. Mr. Datch. Moved by Mr. Datch, seconded by Madam Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you for those members of the staff that are in attendance this evening. Move on to this time. So that we're concluded. The motion to adjourn, I guess. Motion to adjourn. We've gone. Moving on to the regular meeting of Council 20-17, following the meeting of the Committee of the Whole. I'm calling that meeting to order. Are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I'd entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none indicated, Madam Clerk, we make a note of that. Calling for a motion to adopt the minutes. Regular meeting of Council 19-17 held on June 26, 2017. Moved by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Demery. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Are there determination of items requiring separate discussion? There being none, I would call for a motion to approve all those items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Datch. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any proclamations tonight? I guess there are none, Madam Clerk. Do we have minutes of boards, commissions, and committees? There are none there as well. Consideration of bylaws. Could you read out the bylaws, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be enacted and passed. Bylaw 64946117 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Dr. Jeff Remington respecting the maintenance of a family practice. Bylaw 64956217 being a bylaw to provide for and to levy the costs incurred in preparing a Section 76 engineer's report for drainage works in the city of Port Colborne, known as the Black Creek Drainage Works, bylaw 6496-6317, being a bylaw to authorize entering into agreement of purchase and sale respecting parts of lots 1 and 2, Plan 845 being Part 2 on Plan 59R 15885, bylaw 6497-6417, being a bylaw to authorize certain new capital works in the city of Port Colborne, to authorize the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for financing such works, to authorize temporary boring to meet expenditures in connection with such works, and to authorize long-term boring for such works through the issuance of debentures, and bylaw 64986517 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of July 10th, 2017.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Call for a motion to accept those bylaws. Moved by Councilor Kenny, seconded by Councilor Desmarais. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are coming to the end of our agenda. I'd call for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Dance, seconded by Councilor Kenny. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for a productive evening. See you next 2 weeks.